Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Got a crazy story for you here out of California. Tim sent it. Thanks a lot from KGO. Bay Area teacher wrongly ID'd as convict. Pulled from class due to her last name being Smith. Stephanie Sierra and Renee Curry wrote it. It was a very unwelcome to California experience for a new school teacher in San Jose who had just moved there from Minnesota with her husband, but a background check upended their new life. She was mistakenly tagged as a convict and then had to prove her own innocence. And this could happen to you. And it does happen, especially if you have a common last name. The teacher's never been arrested, but someone else with a name similar to hers was arrested. And of course, her last name being Smith makes this more likely to happen. So she and her family had just come from Minnesota to the Bay Area. She said, I don't know. I think I was just in shock. Literally, we just moved our family 2,000 miles and then this. Her husband had gotten a job at Apple. She got a job teaching special ed in the Oak Grove School District of San Jose. So that was going to support them. She said, I just moved to the most expensive state in the freaking country, and I immediately lose my job. So scary. It happened just weeks into the last school year, when she was pulled out of the classroom. So the school year had started, she's teaching, she's yanked from the classroom, brought into the office, and the head of HR is there and says, your background check came back and you lied on it. You lied on your background check. It turned out that the state's Commission on Teacher Credentialing, the CTC, had denied her teaching credential. The CTC said a background check showed she was convicted of driving under the influence in 2009, but that was impossible because, among other things, in 2009, her name wasn't Smith. That's the name she got when she got married after that. So she said, this isn't me. It was so hard because you can't talk to anybody. I just kept saying, this isn't me. This isn't me. And it didn't matter because they weren't going to do anything about it. They said, this is up to you. So she pointed out that her fingerprint check had come back clean, and the CTC said she had to go to the courthouse and get the court files and then file that with a new application and had to include the conviction with the application, but it wasn't her conviction. And by the way, she has to pay a whole new application fee. And this is all correspondence, writing back and forth. This is taking time. So she wrote back to the CTC saying it wasn't her court record. And they said, well, take it up with the Department of Justice because apparently it's a state Department of Justice which does the background checks. So she's talking about incredibly infuriating this is. Weeks later, the DOJ did send over a rap sheet which listed arrests of 3 people who all share her last name and have similar names to hers, but the last name, of course, is Smith. So one of those people had been convicted of the DUI they are now saying they thought was hers. Now, in that report is a note saying this is a soft background check based on names and numbers, but not fingerprints. And she says, how on earth do you think you're going to do a name background check with a name like Smith? And then the CTC says, yep, this makes sense. Let's deny her credentials. So she filed a dispute with the state DOJ to remove the DUI from her record. But it took a while for that to happen. So meanwhile, students were in class. She was a teacher, but she had no credentials, just that crime on her record. She said, I hid in my classroom. I had my door shut 90% of the time and just cried. She was reassigned as a teacher's aide, then as an emergency substitute, still running the class, but earning a fraction of her normal wages. I didn't know if it was right or wrong that I was showing up as a sub, if teaching these kids without a credential is legal. And then on the other side, I'm like, these are children sitting in front of me that need a teacher. Their parents expect them to be taught. So the interesting thing is that the school apparently understood and believed her, like, yeah, okay, because they wouldn't let her be back in the classroom if they didn't think she's going to get that credential. So she said, I still showed up to work, put a smile on my face. When you saw me, I was dying inside. So the DOJ investigated the case, and by December, it took them till December, it found that she was not the person convicted in 2009. Her name wasn't even Smith back then because she was single and using her maiden name, which was not Smith. So the DOJ then cleared her record. She got her credential, but she lost $24,000 in lost wages and also lost time with her students and months of anguish. So the TV station KGO did reach out to both the CTC and the DOJ. to ask him about this. They did not comment. But the Attorney General's office told the TV station that the DOJ is required by law to provide all possible matches for criminal records using many identifiers, not just fingerprints. Not just fingerprints. The CTC told him that it's up to applicants to clear the mistakes on their records. The AG's website says comprehensive background checks for licensing and credentials are meant to protect citizens, especially children. Think of the children. And by the way, I've been fingerprinted. I have been. Because to become a member of the Michigan bar, you take the bar exam and all that, but they also do a background check on you. And they ran my fingerprints. I had to go into a police station in the old days and do the thing with the ink. And they hand you a paper towel. Here, wipe this off. Okay. So she filed a claim for her loss, but both agencies are immune from paying any civil damages for the most part. She said, I guess I'm at fault because my name is common. There's no protection for people with common names. If I had $1 million, I'd move back to Minnesota right now. I don't love this state. So the DOJ conducts about 2 million background checks every year, but would not say how often mistakes happen. And it says they have a process to challenge the errors. It's just it might take you some time, and you've got to do it yourself. So defense attorneys told the TV station that people with common names often are targeted, and that is also true. And I've told the story before that there are other Steve Lehtos in America. There's one who's a musician in Minnesota, I believe. There's one who's a mathematician up in the Northwest someplace. And there's one who is an executive at a company in the Midwest that I believe sells canned goods. And there was a time, about 15 years ago, when I lived in an area and I became aware of the fact that someone with my exact name lived near me. Person was 10 years older, but had the exact same name, first, middle, and last, spelled the first name the same way, and actually looked a little bit like me, just a little bit. And they had a rap sheet this long. And one of my hands is off the camera, and I actually had to put them both off camera because the rap sheet was this long. And I made a mental note, I'm not kidding you, that if I was ever to get pulled over by a police officer who asked me for my driver's license, I was going to say, look at the birthday. Please note the birth date. Because the birth dates being 10 years apart would mean that you could tell that we're different people. My concern was that if I didn't say that, and they went back and just typed in my name, and it pulled up 2 people with that name in that area, it might pull the other person up first. And if they glance at it and go, oh my God, this guy's got legal issues, I might find myself face down wearing handcuffs in about 3 minutes. So I made a mental note, if you get pulled over, it's going to be check the birth date. And if you ask, why do you say that? I'm going to say, because there's someone else, same name, first, middle, and last, as me, who lives in this area with a rap sheet, and it's not me. And the guy's 10 years older. So you'll know that from the birth date. Please check the birth date. But here, that never happened, by the way. It never happened. But here, her last name is Smith. And they go, oh, we found a drunk driver with your name back in 2009 here in California. And she wasn't in California, and her name wasn't Smith then. So that should have been easy to straighten out. But the fact that it's that hard to straighten out, and don't give me this think of the children nonsense, because most people understood this story, and I've only been talking for a few minutes now. I know it seems like longer, doesn't it? No, just kidding. So you'd think that somebody could say, let's go pull the record of that other person who got the DUI, and I don't know, check what their name, address, and all that information was at the time, and then see if she can produce her name, address, and information from 2009 for where she was. And the marriage license should probably cover that because she changed her name when she got married. So, Tim, thanks for sending that from KGO. Stephanie Sierra and Renee Corey wrote that. Bay Area teacher wrongly ID'd as convict and pulled from class and lost $24,000 at least, primarily because her last name's common. Smith. There you go. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. It does not matter how slowly you go, so long as you do not stop.